Can you imagine holding on to a feeling for so long, nearly 3 decades before you can finally give it a voice? Well, today, we're diving into a classical Korean poem, a hanshi, that is exactly that. It's a powerful story about a son's love for the mother he barely knew, a journey 28 years in the making, and it's all captured in just 8 incredibly beautiful lines. So let's just set the scene here. The year is 1238. A little boy named Hong Ja-beon loses his mother. He's only 3 years old, and because of his family's situation, he can't even visit her grave. So for 28 long years, he just carries this ghost of a memory of her. It's not until 1266, when he's a grown man and a government official, that his job finally takes him to her resting place. Can you even imagine carrying that weight for almost 3 decades? And that really brings us to the heart of our explainer today. How on earth do you find the words for a lifetime of love for someone you can barely remember? How do you boil down 28 years of yearning into just a handful of characters? Well, Hong Ja-beon found a way. So here's how we're going to walk through this incredible poem. We'll start with the story behind it. Then we're going to break it down verse by verse to really get the deep meaning. And finally, we'll talk about the timeless wisdom it offers all of us, even today. Okay, first things first, let's set the stage. The poem's full title isn't just a title. It's actually a long, descriptive sentence that tells us everything we need to know about why it was written. It's basically the prologue to this whole emotional journey. So here's the backstory. Hong Ja-beon's father was a local official, which meant when his mother died, she was buried really far from where they lived. It was only when Hong Ja-beon himself got a job as a provincial inspector that his duties took him to the exact region where his mother was buried. You know, this wasn't just a career move. It feels like fate finally unlocking this deeply personal journey into his own past. All right, let's get into the poem itself. It kicks off with the poet facing this faint, painful memory from his childhood and the harsh reality of seeing his mother's grave for the very first time. Here are the first 2 lines in their original Hanja characters. The amazing thing about hanshi is just how much emotion is packed into every single one of these symbols. Let's break down some key characters here. First, we have A, which means child. Then we have Ja and An. Together, they mean a loving, compassionate face. And this is immediately contrasted with Go, which means lonely, and Bun, which means grave. A lonely grave. See? Even in just the individual characters, you can already feel the story starting to form. So when you put it all together, this is what you get. He remembers himself as just a crying baby, a nursing child, parting from that loving face. And now, as a grown man, he's hit with this shocking realization that all this time, her lonely grave was right here, on this mountain. The shock and the sadness are just so raw. Now, in the next 2 lines, the poet's perspective shifts. He moves from the pain of his past to this really profound realization he has about his mother's love, that it's lasted even across the border between life and death. And here is the second couplet. It really speaks to a connection that physical separation, even something as final as death, just can't break. Okay, let's look at these characters. Su means although. Gyuk means separated, so right away it's setting up a contrast. And then we see John, which means to exist or to remain, and it's followed by in and a, grace and love. So even though they're separated, love remains. And this gives us such a beautiful translation. He can't hear her voice or see her face anymore. They're on different paths now. But her une, her grace and love, it still exists. He says it's as vivid as the patterns on the silk clothes she might have dressed him in as a baby. It's just this incredibly powerful statement that a mother's love is truly timeless. So now, the poem brings us right into the present moment, standing there at the gravesite. The poet describes this simple, solemn ritual that he performs, and we get a glimpse into the powerful emotional battle he's fighting inside. These lines just perfectly capture the quiet dignity of his tribute and the immense grief he's carrying inside him on the long journey back home. Let's look closer at this. Bei is the cup, the offering he makes to her Han, her spirit. Qian signifies the 1,000-mile journey he has to make back. But here's the real emotional core. It's the conflict between Ru, the tear, and In, the act of holding that tear back, an offering for her, and this struggle within himself. So in this quiet moment, as he pours a cup of wine over the grave, he feels a connection. He feels like his mother's spirit understands his gesture, and that seems to give him strength. He doesn't fall apart. He internalizes his grief, holding back his tears on the long road home. And this isn't about being cold. It's an act of profound, mature reverence for her. And that brings us to the final couplet. After decades of unspoken sorrow and this incredibly emotional journey, the poet now has to find a way to release something that words alone just can't express. These last two lines, this is the poem's catharsis. It's an admission that some feelings are just too big for language. They need a different kind of expression, a different kind of release. Let's look at these last characters. Men means countless, a huge number, and it's modifying a, which is sorrow or grief. He's saying words can't capture it. So what does he do? He writes a she, a poem. And then he uses two different characters that both mean to give, bu and yo, to show he is truly entrusting it to something beyond himself. And here it is, the poem's incredibly powerful conclusion. His grief is just too vast for words, so he writes this very poem that we've been reading, and he gives it to the quietly flowing river. It's this beautiful, symbolic release. He's letting the river carry his lifelong sorrow away. He finds peace, not by forgetting, but by giving his feelings a physical form and then letting them go. So, okay, we have this deeply personal poem from the 13th century. What can it possibly teach us today? Well, the story might be specific, but the wisdom it holds is absolutely universal. This poem is just a masterclass in some of life's deepest truths. It shows us that unconditional love, or sarang, can truly transcend death and time. It's about gamza, this profound gratitude for a parent's love, even one that's barely remembered but always felt. It demonstrates gangyang, a dignified reverence in how we can honor those we've lost. And finally, it teaches us that we can find pyeongang, or peace, by giving our overwhelming emotions an outlet, a voice, a release. In the end, I think we all have our own unspoken griefs, right? Our own unexpressed feelings of gratitude, our own countless feelings that words just can't seem to capture. Hong Ja-beon entrusted his to a river, and that kind of leaves us with a question. What emotions are you holding inside that could be released if you just found your own poem to the river?